What's up, everybody? In today's video, we're going to take a further look at chord inversions and how to use them to make your playing more musical and more enjoyable. If you haven't subscribed, I want to encourage you to do so. Ring the bell so you get notified of new content. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your feedback and any ideas or questions for future videos. Without further ado, let's get started. Before we get into today's video, let's just do a brief review of what a chord inversion is. So let's take C major, for example. We've got C, E, and G, root position. All right. And so just to invert the chord, all we're literally doing is just rearranging where the notes go. So for first inversion, we've got 3, 5, root. For second inversion, we've got 5, root, 3. If you haven't watched my video about intro to chord inversions, I want to encourage you to do that. I'm going to link that in the video right now, and I'll also include a link in the description box below. Check that out. If you have questions or you're not sure about chord inversions, I outline just the basics of it and kind of give you the formula or a template just to get started. But in today's video, what I want to do is to give you some tools to apply chord inversions into your songs, into your chord progressions, just into your playing in general. Now, these aren't hard and fast rules. They're just ways to get you started. What I've learned with music is that there really are no rules per se. There's principles, there's guidelines, there's things that you can follow, but at the end of the day, you really want to do what sounds good. And so these sound good, but they're not an end all. So I don't want you to get to the end of the video and go, okay, this is the only way that I can use these chord inversions. There's so many different things you can do. There's really two principles that we're going to talk about real quick, and then we're going to break down exactly how to apply this to a chord progression. Number one, you want to retain as many common tones as possible. In other words, you want to keep the same notes from chord to chord if you can. Now, we're just going to be dealing with triads today, but once we start getting into major 7, minor 7, suspended 2s, add 9s, different chords that add more notes to them, because you're adding more notes to each chord, the ability to retain common tones between each chord is greater, and that makes things even easier. But there's still ways to do it even with your triads. And so the first thing is you want to retain as many common tones. For example, let's take again our C major triad. And so if I was to go to, let's say, an A minor chord, and we're going to do this in just a minute. I'm just going to jump ahead just for a second. But if I was to go to an A minor chord with root position, I would have to either go to here, or if I'm here, I'd have to jump all the way up. And we touched on this in my intro video, but that limits you. You literally only have one way to play the chord. And so if we want to apply this principle of retaining as many common tones as possible, we want to find an inversion that keeps as many notes the same as possible. And so we're going to get to that in just a minute. Number 2, let's just jump to number 2 here. We want to move as little as possible between the chord voices. So if we have to change the notes, which we will, we want to move as little as possible. So maybe a whole step or a whole step and a half at the most. So we want to just keep those voices moving as little as possible. Okay, so number 1, we want to retain as many common tones as possible from chord to chord. And number 2, we want to move as little as possible between the chord voices that have to change. All right, so let's break this down. We're going to start with a basic chord progression, and we're just going to do a 1, 6, 4, 5 progression. So if you're still getting used to the Nashville number system, That's going to be C major, A minor, F major, G major. And I picked a pretty universal chord progression here because that's a chord progression that you're going to find in a lot of different genres of music. Okay, so let's just play the chord progression as is, root position. Okay, it's a little clunky, right? You're not able to that's it. That's all you have. And really the only other option would be to go up. But that's essentially it. So obviously it limits you. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through a very systematic way to think through kind of linking these inversions together and which ones are going to be the best. And so let's start with our C major triad. And so again, with our root C major triad, we have C, E, and G. Okay? Those are our notes. Now the next chord in the progression is an A minor chord. That's our sixth chord. And so what we want to do is we want to find the inversion of A minor that keeps as many common tones, number one, and the voices that need to move, we want them to move as little as possible. What we're going to do is just go through root, first, and second inversions. All right, so let's begin with root here. So we have A, C, and E. That's obviously much too far away. Let's go to first inversion. We have C, E, and A. And let's go to second inversion, E, A, and C. So if we're coming from root position C major, right here, the inversion that makes the most sense is first inversion A minor. If we go back to our two principles, number one, move as little as possible with the chord voices. Number two, retain as many common tones. We're able to do that because we can keep the C and the E literally there. We don't have to move. And all we have to do is move our G up to A. So we go, here's our root position C, first inversion A minor. Now, the way I would finger the C major would be 1, 2, and 4. And that way, all you literally have to do is move your pinky up to A. So your hand stays pretty much exactly in the same position. You're literally just moving one note up. Okay? Way easier, way more musical than just going. Okay? So let's move to the next chord. Next chord we have is an F major chord. Okay, so we've got our root position C major. We'll do that again. First inversion A minor. Now, let's go through the options that we have for our F major chord. Okay, root position F major. Okay, that's not going to work. First inversion A, C, F. Second inversion C, F, A. I call it the Chick-fil-A chord. So we've got our root position C major, first inversion A minor, and then check this out, we've got second inversion F major, and we can retain the C and the A tone, and all we have to do is literally play our third finger, and there we've got second inversion F major. So let's go back through it again. Root position C, first inversion A minor, second inversion F major. Okay, very, very smooth. So literally. Okay. All right. Our last chord is our G major chord. let's go through our options with G major. We've got root position G, G, B, D. We've got first inversion G, B, D, G. Then we've got second inversion G, D, G, and B. Okay, so we're coming from second inversion F major. Okay. Now, so really there's a couple options. I mean, you could go a couple different ways. You could go from second inversion F down to first inversion G. You could do that. But really the way that you're going to move the least is if you go from second inversion F up to second inversion G major. That's because you're literally using the same shape. So each voice is only moving a whole step. And again, there's no hard and fast rule. And if you're on a second inversion F major triad and you're like, hey, I really want to go down to here. You know, it's not like, oh, you're not doing principle number 2. You should go up to here. So all I'm doing right now is just showing you the advantage of what chord inversions can do, the power of them really to make your chord changes as smooth as possible. So really there's no right or wrong here. I'm just showing you can literally move the voices a whole step in all 3 voices of the chord, and that's pretty awesome. And that's just with our triads. That's not with any other types of chords. So I'm just going to play through the progression. I'm going to go through root position again so you can hear what that sounds like, and then I'm going to play through it again using the chord inversions that we just went over. Okay, so there's your root position. Here's the same progression using the inversions. Okay, much more musical. So for example, if we go back to what I just played, if I've got my root position C, that kind of naturally creates a melody. Okay, and so that's huge when we start to incorporate the melodic elements of playing with harmonic elements of playing and being able to play the melody with an inversion to kind of fill things out. The whole exercise that we just did was just based off of our root position C. So if we started on first inversion C major, you know, then we have a whole different set of chords just like that. Or so it's a whole new way of playing it, right? Depending on what inversion you're starting with. Now, like I said before, this isn't an end-all, but it at least gives you a step in the right direction. And so what I would encourage you to do is sit down with a song, sit down with even just a chord progression like we did in multiple different keys and start to apply these different concepts. And so again, number 1, you want to retain as many common tones as possible. And then number 2, the voices that do need to move, try to make them move as little as possible. And then just let that be your starting point. Just start there and just have fun with it. Well, thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. Again, subscribe if you haven't already. Ring that bell so you get notified. And leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And I'd also love to hear about any topics or questions that you might have for future videos. Until then, I'll see you next time.